In the driver's seat of Vanessa's police cruiser, Mike curls his finger around the car's thick, leathering steering wheel and stomped on the accelerator as he rounded a curve and hit the straightaway on the back road that lead from the aid station of Freddy's. The V8 engine rumbled, and Mike felt the cruiser's power swell around him. He inhaled deeply, gathering his courage. The interior of the car smelled like Vanessa. If Mike closed his eyes, which he wasn't going to do this fast, he could have convinced himself he was sitting in the field of flowers, under an apple tree, eating a vanilla cookie, if only. The night was pitch black, and the only light on the road was created by the searchlight beam from the cruiser's headlights. Surrounded by all the LED light equipment inside the car, Mike felt like he was on the cockpit of a spaceship, flying through the farthest reaches of the galaxy. It was too bad that all the bells and whistles that crowded the cruiser's dashboards in the middle of the console were of no use to Mike. Too bad they weren't phasers or photon tornadoes or something, unfortunately. A two-way radio laptop, radar gun, electronic ticket console, video camera, in-vehicle router, and automatic license plate reader were not going to help Mike save his sister. Electricity, Vanessa's voice said in Mike's head. With one eye in the steer of the light, drilled through the black tunnel of country road of forest and one eye in his memory, Mike relieved his preparations of returning to Freddy's. He's been getting ready to leave the aid station, bloody and shredded shirt back on. Mike clicked Vanessa's utility belt in place around his waist. The leather band was heavy because of all the compartments and sleeves were stuffed full, except for the gun holster, because Vanessa wouldn't let Mike have her gun. Mike settled the belt as comfortably as he could around his hip as Vanessa opened one of the tall supply cabinets and leaned into it. Electricity is the key. Vanessa's voice was muffled because her head was in the cabinet. Vanessa's head came out of the cabinet. She turned, holding what looked like a long, blackened sleeve barbecue fork with a lightsaber-like handle. Vanessa pushed a button on the handle, and a blue spit of electricity sparked between the two prongs of the end of the fork. We use these cattle prawns for animal control. She walked toward Mike and points at his waist. And you got two Kaiser guns on the utility belt. They won't do permanent damage, but they'll mess with the animatronics circuitly, hopefully buying you some time. The cruiser's heavy-duty tires hit the pothole deep enough to jolt the vehicle. Mike shut his mind replay. He glanced at the cattle prod, which lay on the passenger seat. Would it really help? Given everything Vanessa had hid from Mike, could he trust her advice? Mike put his attention fully back on the road, and when he did, he spotted a faint red aura low in the distance, neon red, plus some yellow and white. Freddy's exterior lights were on. The beerly preservation that reached on the surrounding blackout looked to Mike like a dire omen. It's pretty much scream, abandon all hope, all yaw who entered there. Cattle prod hanging from the loop of the utility belt, Mike gripped the tire iron he got from the cruiser truck after he parked the car in the back edge of the pizzeria's destinary Asplip. He was sulking along the side of the grizzled old building, which struck him with a hostile enemy waiting for him. In stealth mode, eager for coming battle, bending low, Mike ran his hand alongside the rough rep wood siding. You should avoid the main entrance. The memory of Vanessa guide him in the head. Look for the outline vent on the east side of the building. It was sealed up years ago, but if you can get it open, that's the best way to get inside without being detected. Mike's palm transitioned from the slurring board to what felt like rusty metal. Bingo. Step 1. Find the vent opening. Done. Mike fumbled with the utility belt. He found the pen-like compartment, and he pulled it out. Aiming the light, briefly, at the metal he found, he saw 2x4 that has been nailed over the vent. Even on the on and off blip of pentlight he showed on the boards, he could see the lumper was gray with age. Shouldn't be a problem to remove. Mike groped around the utility belt and found the sleeve that held a folding knife. Flip it open, he used the end of it to work the nails loosened on the board. The back and forth motion made an easy scritch, but it wasn't too loud. In just a few minutes, Mike had pried the boards away from the vent. After that, his knife made a quick work of loosening the cover of the siding. Step 2. Remove vent opening. Done. Mike dropped to the ground and peered onto the confined murk of the vast shaft. The penlight retrieved a dusty mass of cobwebs just inside the opening. Mike sighed and swiped away the webs. He's in He eased into the meager space and snaked himself forward. As he slithered, his mind took him back to the aid station. He replayed his last few moments with Vanessa. Vanessa had handed Mike the keys to her cruiser. Their fingers had brushed together briefly. The effect of the touch lingered far from Vanessa drew her hand back. Troubled by the puzzle of his feelings for this woman who flipped so miraculously from friend to foe, Mike had shifted his gaze to her face. He found her looking directly back at him. Of all the emotions Vanessa had triggered in Mike, the prominent one was now betrayal. Mike felt double-crossed, stabbed in the back. The throbbing pain of his wounds highlighted the sensation. Could he see the bitterness in his eyes? Mike didn't know, but he could easily read her feelings. Vanessa's face went contorted with humiliation and regret. For an instant, Mike felt sorry for Vanessa, but then he thought of Garrett. How many? Mike asked. He clipped the words and swung them at her like he was hitting her with her own baton. Vanessa flinched and looked away. She avoided the question. You need to hurry. Mike dropped his voice in an aggressive snarl. How many, Vanessa? How many has your father killed? Vanessa's glare flicked back to Mike's face and then away again. I don't know. Honestly, I don't. Is Garrett? Mike couldn't finish the question. He swallowed and tried again. Is my brother one of them? In the machines? Vanessa looked squarely at Mike and shook her head. No. Garrett was before Freddy's. Mike felt a flame of fury settle by inches. It was small comfort. It was a small comfort, but at least his brother wasn't a ghost trapped in a robot. Mike collected himself. Garrett was gone, but he could save Abby. He had to get moving. Come with me, he said to Vanessa. Vanessa shook her head vehemently. No. Mike leaned in toward her. You owe them, and you owe me. Vanessa's head shook even more empathetically, so much that her hair twist came undone, and her hair fell down the back. I can't, Mike, she said. I can't. Obviously seeing that her refusal was rekindled the fire of his anger, she rushed on. I really can't. If he's there, I won't be any use to you, believe me. Mike did. He looked into your eyes, so soft blue right now that it seemed like it was some of her essence, life force, was leaching from her. He saw it clearly now, the reason for the way she's acting, for the choices she made. Vanessa had lived through even more trauma than Mike had. She was beyond screwed up from her childhood. She was broken. Mike's words came out thoughtless. He really messed you up, didn't he? Vanessa turned away. She was visibly quivering. Please. Her voice was soft but instant. You have to hurry. Mike fisted the cruiser keys. He nodded. He turned away from Vanessa. He saw her sink into the floor. Her sobs followed him out of the aid station. The replay in Mike's mind faded out as a rat scrambled past Mike. Mike's knee-jerk reaction to the rodent brought him to a dead stop, and he couldn't sworn he was hearing Vanessa's sob muttering through the vent shaft. The pitiful sounds wrapped around him just as heavily as his thick, sticky clumps of cobweb that clung to his hair, clothes, and skin. Mike wanted to cover his ears to block out the sun, but he knew it came from within him, and besides, he needed his hands and arms to continue his army crawl. Even over the memories of Vanessa's sobs, Mike could hear the sounds of 80 music. He heard it faintly when he was just a few feet inside the building, and it got louder and louder as he progressed through the shaft. The driving rock beat muffled the imagery sounds of Vanessa's pain, and they brought Mike fully into the present. Mike inched his way around the turn of the shaft, and he saw a flare of painted lights reaching towards him and through the darkness. He was almost to the dining room. Mike picked up the pace. This created more noise, but the booming music masked the thinning banging of his knees against the metal ductwork. In just seconds, Mike Panfin reached the metal grate of the cover of the end of the vent shaft. Through the sighted slats he could see, minimally, to the dining room and the stage at the opposite end. Mike turned his head so he could push his face against the slabs. He put his eye on the one opening. He choked on one of his heavy breaths. Abby, Mike whispered urgently. Abby was flushed and sweaty from the dance of music. Her friend's act was amazing. All the time they'd been performing, Abby's friends had seemed lost in the music. Now, though, Chica looked down at Abby and motioned for Abby to come up the stage. Yay, Abby thought. She hopped up on the stage and ran to her friend. Abby expected to be included in the performance, but instead, Chica took her hand and pulled her back away to the microphones. While the others continued to dance and sing, Chica led Abby in the back of the stage. Abby was confused, but she didn't resist. Why would she? Chica was her friend. Abby went along, wondering what Chica was up to, as Chica opened the door and stepped into the hall, a really small one that had almost no light. Chica started down the hall, pulling Abby along by her hand. Although his view was obscure, Mike could see through the door at the back of the stage. Chica was leading Abby to the narrow corridor. Mike shoved at the metal crate. It didn't bulge. Backtracking so he can throw more power into his effort, Mike pounded on the vent covering. It continued to hold. Rapid in his need to get through the opening, Mike's hands groped Vanessa's utility belt. There was gotta be something he could use to loosen the vent covers. Abby trusted Chica, but the cramped hallway made her think of the cave, a long cave, underground and cut off from light. It made her a little nervous. Abby was about to ask Chica where they were going when Chica stopped and let go of Abby's hand. The chick stepped back, and Abby saw the open doorway. "What's in there?" Abby asked. Chica raised a hand and pointed at the large, feathery finger in the room. Still a little nervous, but game, Abby shrugged and walked forward. She found herself in a room filled with tools and parts and robots. It was kind of icky looking. She didn't like seeing all the unconnected hands and arms and legs. Chica nudged Abby and pointed again. Abby turned, and she immediately hugged herself. She really didn't like what she was looking at now, not even a little. Sitting in the kind of light Abby had seen at a haunted house on TV, red hair a big red-haired doll with rosy cheeks lay in the metal chair. Abby didn't like either the doll, which was staring eyes and a tooth-like smile, or the chair, which was ugly and hard-looking. Abby began backpedaling. She was no longer just a little nervous. She was feeling really bad, like something was really, really wrong. She thought it might be time to. A sound, sort of like a purring cat, but not as friendly, began coming from the doll. Abby, struck in place by growing fear and the tiniest bit of curiosity, stared at the doll. As Abby watched, the doll's torso began to open. The doll's inside looked like they were filled with a sharp metal. Abby's curiosity went away. Scare was the only thing left. She backed up another step. "Chica," Abby began. "I don't like." Abby stuck in her breath when Chica lunged forward her. Before Abby could complete her breath or make another sound, Chica grabbed Abby by the waist and lifted Abby off the floor. When Mike finally got to the crate loose, with the help of the multiple tools from Vanessa's duty belt, one punch sent the vent cover flying. It clattered to the floor, but the noise was barely noticeable because the rock music was now blaring even more louder. Its volume was nearly the speaker's exploding disciples. Mike crawled out the vent on the floor. There he lay still, looking forward to the stage. Had the animatronics seen him come out of the vent opening? It didn't seem like it. Boxy was still dancing in the small stage. And Freddy and Bonnie were singing their lungs out, eyes closed, boogieing childishly, figuring that if he stayed low he could fly under the radar. Mike began crawling towards the main stage. As he went, he kept an eye on the animatronics, but they're still oblivious. They were like dervishes, lost in their performance. They move in an almost maniacal intensity. When Mike reached the base of the stage, he raised his head. He needed to reach the doorway at the back of the stage, but Freddy and Bonnie blocked his way. How could he get past them? As Mike hissed a distant and very loud clink-chong prop Mike out of the pondering into his action. He leaped to his feet and strode towards the sound, which was coming from down the hall, not from the back of the stage. What if Chica had led Abby further to the beginning in the roundabout way? Mike was no longer thinking about the animatronics. He was thinking about Abby. He had to find her. Freddy's eyes opened. He stopped singing and dancing. He looked at Mike's direction. Mike immediately ducked low and scrambled backward. After just a couple yards of retreat, his foot whanked against something and he felt a splash of water soak his shoes and sock. He turned. The buckets of soapy and now dirty water were still sitting in the base of the stage, right where Mike had left them. Mike glanced at the stage. Freddy was back to performing again. Good. The bucket hadn't triggered the idea of a plan. One that might just work. "Chica, no!" Abby screamed as Chica carried her toward the awful doll in the metal chair. Chica had Abby by the torso, head in front of Chica, and legs behind. Grunting, Abby swarmed and twisted, but Chica's grip was too strong. Chica flipped Abby over and began pushing her on the open doll. Abby, her heart going faster than it ever had, did everything she could to stay away from the doll's scary metal parts. Abby kicked her legs like she was swimming. She threw out her feet to drive her shoe into Chica's hip. She balled her hands into fists and pounded on Chica's arm. Abby's hissy fit-like struggle slowed Chica down a little bit. because the chick had to try to line Abby up with the doll, and she couldn't because Abby kept moving. However, Chica wasn't slowed down enough. Abby knew why. She was just a little girl, and Chica was big and made out of metal. Abby couldn't get free. She felt herself being pushed back on the metal parts. Help! She shrieked. Abby really wanted her brother. She really, really did. Mike had gotten himself into the crouch next to one of the buckets when he heard Abby's cry. The sound moved him fast. Grabbing the bucket, Mike dashed towards the stage. He was fully visible on the stage now, but Freddy and Bonnie were too engrossed with their performance to notice. Mike pulled back the bucket and tossed the contents to the stage floor right under Freddy's feet. Mike whirled and went to the second bucket. This one threw to Bonnie's feet. As soon as the second bucket was empty, Mike tossed it aside. He pulled out one of the taser guns from Vanessa's utility belt, and he planted himself in front of the stage. Mike fired the taser without hesitation. Instantly, the gun's wire shot metal probes up and towards the pools of water beneath the animatronic's feet. An arc of blue electricity hit the water and coursed like a heat-seeking or robot-seeking missile into those feet. The electricity shot up through both animatronics. The bright display of sparks fountained over the stage. Freddy and Bonnie stopped singing and dancing. They were stiff. The stage lights flickered, then went out. Both animatronics became fell redwood. They hit the stage like they'd been dropped into a top of a 50-story building. Whapam! The impact literally shook the building's foundation. While the floor beneath him was still pulsing, Mike turned. He ran towards the sound of his sister's screams for help. Abby was almost completely pressed into the doll now. Her neck and her back and legs and arms were all hurt from the hard, sharp metal poking her skin. Panting and crying, Abby was becoming too weak to fight anymore. Her throat hurt for screaming and yelling, and now she was crying, and her nose was so stuffed up that she was having trouble breathing. Abby looked up at Chica. Abby had never been so hurt and let down. Not even Mike had ever made her feel this bad before. Abby sniffed. Please, Chica, let me go. Chica didn't even look at Abby. The animatronic was reaching down. Abby started to gasp even more frantically for breath. She was sure Chica was about to close her into the doll. But then, a haunting house light was groped by the light. Abby squinted and tried to see around Chica. Hey! Mike's voice shouted. Mike! Abby called out. I knew he'll come, he thought. Eventually, Abby hadn't known Mike would come, but she hoped, and that her fear had made the hope go away. Now the hope is back. Mike, was flipped on the main lights of the parts and service room, stood in the doorway, his taser gun at the ready. Get the hell away from my sister! He yelled at the nasty yellow chick who was trying to shove Abby in that red hair animatronic. Mike realized the doll-like animatronic. It was the one he'd seen in the storage room. No way was he going to let Abby get close into that killing machine. She could turn away from the metal chair. Letting go of Abby, the robot chick came to Mike. Mike immediately triggered the taser gun. The taser gun's wires steamed through the air. The props separate, and each of them drilled directly in one of Chica's eyes. Chica dropped as fast as hard as her components had. She hit the floor with a full prone position, legs and arms akimbo, and she began to convulse, her eyes blinking frantically. The instant Chica let her go, Abby had shoved herself away from the little girl animatronic. Now she jumped out of the chair and ran to Mike. She threw herself to him. Mike caught his sister in her arms. He hugged her close as she sobbed against his neck. Are you okay? Mike asked. Are you hurt? Mike felt Abby's head shake against her shoulder. No, she said in a tiny voice, but she was crying. Her tears were hot on Mike's skin, trickling down his shirt. Abby pulled her head away from Mike. She stole a glance back at Chica. Mike looked that way too. Smoke was spiraling from up Chica's charred eye sockets. The chicken was dead still. Abby sniffled loudly and said through more sobs, I don't know what's wrong with her. I don't know why she's acting like this. Mike patted Abby's shoulder. I know. It'll be okay. Keeping an eye on Chica, Mike set Abby to the floor, but he held her to her. When it was clear she was steady on her feet, he crouched down in front of her. Listen to me, Abs. Mike put his hand on Abby's shoulder. Abby pulled her glance from Chica and looked into Mike's eyes. He looked right back, and he leaned close to her. I've been an idiot, Mike said, about so many things. I need you to know that I'm sorry, okay? Everything I hung up on, none of it matters. You're the most important thing in my life, and I swear to you, I'm going to make sure you know that. I'm going to show you every day how much you matter. I'm going to do everything better. Abby's brows furrowed briefly. Then she swiped her tears-covered eyes and gave Mike the biggest smile she has ever gotten from her. Mike felt like his heart was blowing up in a massive hot air balloon. But what was filling him wasn't hot air, it was love. He gave Abby a smile to match her own. I love you too, Abby said. Then she glanced at Chica. We should probably go now, Abby added. Mike looked at Chica too. He gave her shoulder squeeze. Right. He straightened. Mike tucked away the taser gun. He used both its cartridges. It wouldn't be a lot of help now. He pulled out the cattle probe and looked down at Abby. We have to assume the others are also out of whack, he said. Abby nodded. Mike linked his free hand to hers. Okay, he said. Let's get out of here. Mike aimed them at the room. They started traveling down the hallway. For the first 20 feet of their flight, Mike thought they had a good chance of getting away, but then he heard a wasp-like buzz, pursuing him down the hall. Tensing, Mike quickly looked over his shoulder. What the hell? A small, hot pink ball was flying towards them, coming to the speed of an arrow shot from a high-powered compound bow. Mike saw a flash of white in the pink. He realized what he was seeing. Chica's cupcake. And the pink ball was attached with his injured calf. Mike bellowed in pain, and his leg went out from under him. The momentum of his fall disconnected Mike from Abby. He hit the floor, a solid impact. His lightning knocked the cattle prod from his grasp. It skidded across the aluminum. Mike! Abby started to crouch over Mike. Run! Mike shouted. Abby looked down the hall. Her eyes were fatigued with horror. She didn't move. Go! Mike urged, whipping his leg back and forth to try to disconnect the cupcake. Hide! Abby finally ran. Mike, now trying to whack the cupcake off with his fist, watched Abby dash across the dining room. Go! He thought when he made a beeline towards the arcade. Abby, her chest heaving, racing past the small stage, heading toward the first row of games machines at the front edge of the arcade. She could hide behind the games, she thought. But Abby was worried about her brother, slowing her pace just a little. Abby started to turn to look towards Mike. That's when she felt it, the strong sense of someone was watching her. Abby whipped her head towards the small stage. At first, Abby saw nothing. Then she noticed a hint of movement. She quickly looked towards it, and she saw the ghost-like form of a little blue-haired boy coming from behind the stage curtains. As fast as the boy appeared, he was gone. But Abby spotted something else. Two print lights of red light split into view from the back of the stage. Abby's eyes was caught with more movement. The silvering tip of Foxy's hook came into view. Abby ran harder than she had ever ran in her life. She shot down the first row of game machines and disappeared, she hoped, into the back of the arcade.